Happy New Year. Good morning. Brother Chad Long with you again from Delhi Baptist Church. And because it is New Year's and Friday, I don't want to start into Jude just yet. I think that because it's, 25 verses, if I'm not mistaken, and it's rather deep, that it may take all next week to go through it properly. I mean, I don't want to speed through Jude. It's full of good things to study. So, with that being said, I would rather just have a special message for today, just a devotion for New Year's itself, and I've chosen to take it from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. So, just for this morning, we're going to get away from our New Testament study there, our little devotional in Jude, which would have started today. We'll start that Monday, Lord willing, if He hadn't come to get us by then. And I'm always hoping, but it's New Year's, so if you would, let's turn our attention to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and let's think about some things. First of all, the Jews have two separate days that they celebrate New Year's. They've got Rosh Hashanah, which is not scripturally a New Year. That's supposed to be Feast of Trumpets, and instead it's just they call it Head of the New Year. And, in the fall, a lot of people start over fiscal years for whatever reason. Some people start dealing with those in the fall, probably to prepare for the beginning of the year. Some people plan it around the particular harvest. But there's different reasons for the two differing starts to a year. There's the Jews have two. We typically, as Americans, just have this one in January, but I don't know who began that. I know that the Lord starts the lunar calendar off with the first lunar month of Nisan, and that's in the spring. So I think I may be no. I've got a note here somewhere. Anyway, that's not the point. The first holidays in the spring, which is Passover, but I could be wrong about the first month is before that because of Purim's in the first month. I'm getting my facts mixed up. Forgive me. There's a point, though. It doesn't matter if I'm mistaken. The point is the lunar calendar starts near to the Gregorian calendar, which is pretty close to this time of year. So, and I don't have their calendar in front of me. I do have one. But the point is, I don't know how these things get started exactly. I know the Jews based that one on the Lord because that's what He told them. But these other beginnings to the year or special holidays that are not in Scripture, I don't know how they get here. New Year's Day is not found in the Bible anywhere, and January is not found in the Bible anywhere. So somebody came up with that. But here's what I want you to get out of it. I don't celebrate New Year's the way a lot of Americans do. I don't drink, and I don't fire off fireworks. Sometimes we have black-eyed peas. Mom had us doing that, but I don't really know why. And we didn't this year. But there are some things that are good about a new year. Because even if you don't subscribe to what the world does in all things, there's a time and a place for everything. There really is. So, Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says this: to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And in other words, however you recognize these things, God gave us the seasons and the changing of the weather, the changing of the leaves, the way the crops work and harvest. Notice, we don't plant them when we want to. We plant them based on what's going on around us. Those who are farmers know when it's about time to plant and when it's about time to fertilize and to cultivate and harvest. So these things we base on a season, and we know when those are. Jesus said that you can tell by the and I'm paraphrasing, but he said you can tell by the changing of the season when something's about to happen. So we ought to be able to tell by what's going on around us when God's doing something. And I think that He's done something in 2020. And I think He'll do something in 2021. But to everything there's a season. And there's a time to every purpose under the heaven. And right now the time for God's people is to recognize that there's something He wants us to do and do it. And you can start here at New Year's. You can begin today and start planning to do something in the season for it, to honor your God and to serve Him better. You can begin today, and I'm not crazy about New Year's resolutions. They almost always fail. But if this is what it takes to get people's mind to reset, recalibrate, regroup, whatever you want to call it, if that's what it takes to get you into a daily devotional, or to get you to begin to go to church, or to get you to start taking things more seriously with your Christianity and your family, well, then that's what you need to do. There's nothing special about January 1 except for people recognize it as an opportunity to start over. So use it as such. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Verse 2, a time to be born. I think we can all agree we were born at a particular time. We celebrate that time. I celebrate it less and less as I get older, but we celebrate when we're born. And there's a time for that. And a time to die. And we all do. Unless you're translated out of here like Enoch, which is not impossible if the rapture comes. But short of that, we're all going to die. A time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted. Excuse me. A time to kill. I don't like this one because it's hard to imagine there's ever a time to kill. But there are times in war when you're fighting for freedom or for your country. I mean, you should never kill for personal reasons. That makes it wrong. But if in the defense of your life or your country or your family, then certainly there comes those times when it may become necessary. And it's not fun to talk about. I'm not endorsing killing ever. But there's a time for those things. A time to heal. And sometimes we really need that time of healing. Sometimes we just have things going on in our lives and we just really need to heal. And sometimes right at January, you can just take a step back and start thinking and reflecting on those things. And you can let yourself heal spiritually, mentally, and physically. A time to break down and a time to build up. Now, this is not talking about a mental breakdown. This is talking about sometimes you weigh the cost, and it's better to tear down a particular structure and rebuild it than it is to try to patch it up and keep it going. That happens. There will come a time with every structure ever built, from the pyramids to our very houses. There will come a time when they will be to a point where you're better off. Things can't be maintained forever. A time to weep. I think we all know that. There's times when even and I'm not a crier, okay? If I get emotional at all, it's very controlled. I'm just not a overly emotional guy. Never was. I'm not a monotone guy. I hope. but I don't take emotions to the extreme. But there's a time to weep, and sometimes I do. There's just times when I let it go, and you should. There's a time to laugh. I'm trying to do that more as I get older. Can't say I'm doing a wonderful job when you've got as many things going on as I do, with family and church. Sometimes you're serious too much and you forget to laugh. But laughing's a good thing, and we should laugh. There's a time for that, and it's good for healing. A time to mourn and a time to dance. Sometimes you need to mourn those that have gone on. This is not always tied to death, but usually it is. You can mourn a great number of things. But there's a time for that. But there's also a time to dance. Now, Baptists don't like that, but believe it or not, there is a time to dance. I think it's when you're young. I think it's when you're young and maybe newlywed or engaged. I think dancing is not a stink in God's nose just by itself. It's the way that we do it and the times that we do it. But I honestly think that when two people are young and love one another and they are want to dance with only one another, I don't think anything's wrong with that. My wife and I used to dance at home. We put on some music and dance close to each other, and it's a very personal thing. I don't necessarily think you ought to be out in a bar doing it, showing everybody your gyrations. That's not a godly way to do that. But I have to admit, even as a Baptist, there is a time to dance, and you know, there's a time to do all of these things, and knowing when is important. Our timing sometimes is just off, knowing when we're supposed to do something, when we're not, and you can seek God out for these things. He says a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. This can be another reference to building, but actually, this can be a reference to a lot of different things. You could take this and apply it to family and friends. There's a time to get away from them and a time to gather them all together. I'll tell you this: at the holidays is a good time to gather your family together. But throughout the year, there's times when it's best to get off by yourself and just reflect on you and on the Lord and your relationship with Him. And you can't just be. Some people are very social. They have to have people around all the time. Some people are very antisocial. They don't want people around ever. And there's a time for these things. There's a time when you should be alone, and there's times when you should have folks around you. Now, I know it's talking about stones, but there's several things he could be referencing there. I just wanted to throw that out there. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. This goes back to what I was just telling you. There's a time when you need a hug. There's been times when I really needed a hug. I just needed a hug. I just needed that physical interaction. It doesn't fix anything, I guess. But then again, it does. Sometimes it just makes you feel like someone cares enough about you to embrace you. And then there's times when a hug's the last thing you need. You just need to storm off and blow off some steam. I mean, there's times for these things. A time to get and a time to lose. Get here means to seek or find or acquire. And there's a time when we're supposed to be building up our bank accounts and our homes and our families. And there's nothing wrong with hard work and accumulation in moderation. I think we get carried away with it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with acquiring things. There's also a time when you need to lose some things. You need to let some things go. You need to clean a house, what they call spring cleaning, get some stuff out. Lord knows we need to do that. We have a couple of pack rats in our family, and we need, I'm not one of them most of the time. Depends on what it is. I seem to acquire tools and jobs that I don't get completed, but we all have those things, and we all have those times, and we need to know when they are so that we can get them straight. A time to rend and a time to sow. To rend means to rip in two or to tear, and sew means to patch back together. This can apply to a lot of things. Just as a matter of clothing, there's a time when it's time to take that old shirt and rip it up and make new rags out of it. Use it for something else. And there's a time when you want to sew it up and keep it and use it. But this applies to other things as well. Relationships, friends, family, projects that you've got. There's a time to tear them up and a time to patch them together. And with the relationships, you have to know when that is. And God will show you. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. The Lord's been talking to me about this one for a long time. Sometimes I just talk entirely too much. My granddaddy would say, Chad, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Because God wanted you to listen twice as much as you talk. And I'll never forget him telling me that. But I have a hard time practicing that. There is a time, sometimes, when we just need to shut up. And I'm talking to me. I'm talking to Chad. There's a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Sometimes people who don't say enough need to speak up. And if you're one of those that never speaks up, try to find the right time and know when that is and then do it. A time to love. Honestly, I would argue that's always. We're supposed to love always. But it's not impossible for humans, because we're not God, to always love. Sometimes we don't have love in our heart. I would argue this when it says a time to love and a time to hate, because I don't believe we're ever supposed to hate. However, keep in mind there is a wicked one out there who's causing destruction all the time. And so if you're going to apply this one, apply it to that. There's a time to love, and the time is now. Let's love each other. Let's love God. Let's love the gospel and share it. And if we're going to hate, the time to hate also is now. But hate the evil that we do and change it. Hate the evil one who causes so much harm. And hate the evil things that go on around us and do something about them. So it's never a time to hate each other. There is a time to hate. A time to love and to hate. Let's love the Lord and hate evil. A time of war and a time of peace. Most of the time we don't get to choose those. We're not in a position of power for that. If they do come, I'm not looking for a war, but if there is one and they need me to fight for my country, I would. I'm not a coward. I'm perfectly willing to fight if it's necessary. But I prefer peace. And I look forward to that peace that Jesus will bring when he comes. Listen, the point is that this is a new year. This is 2021. And there's a time to make some decisions in one's life. And I don't believe in resolutions unless you make them to the Lord. You can't keep anything by yourself. So if you make a promise to yourself, you're liable to break it. But if you make one to God and you love him and you follow him, he'll help you to complete it. Not all resolutions are broken. Not all New Year's resolutions are broken. But the majority of them are. You can pick the time and the place. But we need to make sure that we're doing the right things and we're doing them in the right seasons and for the right person, who is God, our Savior. So I hope I've given you some things to think about. I hope you'll put these things into perspective. I hope that you'll be prayerful and mindful of what God wants you to do, and follow him and love him and do it in season. Paul told Timothy to be instant, in season and out of season, to be prepared to serve the Lord at all times. And I would say the same thing. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys Sunday, and if you're not in our church, be in church somewhere. And Monday we'll resume our study of Jude. God bless you. Have a wonderful New Year's.